that notion that so many of us have come to terms with, is that everything we've been taught is a lie. And the older I get, the more I embrace this statement, the more I look at it, the more horrifying it becomes, and the more horrified I get, realizing how deep the lies are, how far back it goes, and how deeply it's entrenched, and how the tentacles of the lies, how they've infiltrated every crack and crevice of our existence, into every society, into every industry, into every part of our daily lives, and what we do and how we live and how we interact. It is truly spectacular. And you realize that this is not something that could have happened overnight. This is something that must have happened over a very, very long time. This system that was created for us, that's supposed to be serving us, is exactly the opposite. It's a system that was created to prevent us from reaching success and finding the truth, and overcoming hurdles and obstacles that stand in our way. And this makes it very clear when you start looking into this, everything we've been told is a lie. It seems to me, and it's become very clear, that the bigger the lie, the more we believe it. They're not worried about lying about the little things. They lie about the big things, the really, really big things. And then they just fudge the details. They fudge the details, they skew the narrative, and they skew it in the direction that they want it to go. And very quickly, you are so far removed from the truth. And what really happened is that nobody can make out what the hell is going on. So the lies that we've been told, again, are everywhere. It's in our history, about our species, about our origins. Science, the science books are filled with lies. It is quite spectacular, especially when you've gone through medical school like I have, studying pharmaceutics, and you get out of there and then you start looking at what it is that they actually taught me. And you realize that it's got nothing to do with wisdom, nothing to do with finding solutions for problems, and nothing to do with taking care and providing health. It's all programming for you to leave the school and be able to implement the program that they gave you, the program and the guided instruction manual for how to treat disease, how to treat this, what to prescribe, when to prescribe it, and what you can and cannot do, because there are laws that guide that whole industry. It's not just about that they're lying to us. It's about how they integrated the lies and the mechanism of deception propaganda, how they integrated that into every fabric and into facet of our lives and our society. The technology that we use, obviously, healthcare and money. And then the big one is the cosmos, is the lies about the cosmos, who we are, and what it really looks like. So how do they sustain such lies? And this is where you realize that this is a huge operation that cannot happen overnight. This is something that must have happened over an extended period of time, with a fully encompassing controlled propaganda and disinformation campaign that covers all organs of state, large corporations, and a lockstep strategy that they write well in advance, that's planned decades and centuries ahead, handed down from generation to generation of the global elite to all state leaders through their international agencies like the United Nations, the World Health Organization, the World Trade Organization, UNESCO. Believe it or not, UNESCO is just as big a culprit in all of this, because UNESCO deals with our ancient cultural heritage sites. And UNESCO is probably guilty of some of the most heinous and unimaginable crimes against native people of the world. And then the cartel of media giants that they use as the voice and the spokesperson to promote their disinformation and their propaganda. The moment you hear that this is a UNESCO site, you should get very nervous and very worried, because UNESCO is an international organization controlled by the global elite and the bankers, the banking families and their appointed stooges, to go into all countries under the guise of humanitarian and protection of ancient heritage sites and protecting our history. What UNESCO does is they take control of our ancient sites, and then the people of the country lose control over that ancient site and everything around it and about it. UNESCO gains complete control over it and has a final decision of what can be done and cannot be done. This is one of their institutions. So they take control of our educational institutions, from the educational material in primary schools, preschools, primary schools, high schools, and most importantly, the tertiary educations like Oxford University and most other universities on earth. So the moment they have the universities under their control, now we create a hierarchy of educational fascism and educational dictatorship, because the higher you climb the ladder in this educational institution game, I guess, the more brainwashed and the more brainwashed you become, and the more you become prepared for them to appoint you to positions of power and control that they can trust, because they've now trained you really, really well. Not everyone that has gone through all this education is brainwashed, but most of the people that reach those levels in the educational institutions are. Otherwise, they would not be working in those. If they had their own mind, they followed their own intuition, followed their own research, they would have long ago questioned and challenged their establishments, and they would have been expelled. And the next big thing is take control of the research institutions. And the way that they take control of the research institutions is the big corporations are always the ones that do the big research. You and I can't do the research in my garage. I know how difficult it is to do research. In the research that I'm trying to do in the ancient ruins of Southern Africa, in the many samples that I've taken, in the many fossils and rocks that I've collected, just to get scans done of these rocks, to get x-rays done, proton emission x-rays that really penetrate deep into these fossils to show you exactly the internal structure. I can't afford that. I can't afford to have all the soil samples scanned if there's gold residue in there. Basic, simple research that I can't even do because it's so expensive. So you can imagine how the top level research institutes, the Medical Research Institute, the Genetics Institutes, the Stem Cell Research Institute, the technology researchers, and so forth. It's only the large corporations with the money that can afford those research institutions, and then they don't share the knowledge and information. Everything that comes out of those research institutions is their privilege, is their intellectual property. They only share what they want to and put out what they want to and keep the rest so they can control humanity and regain control over their area, their industry, and the products that they manufacture and design and distribute. And it's these same research institutions that provide the research knowledge and information that gets put into the textbooks from pre-primary schools, whether it's history, whether it's literacy, whether it's language, or they plan the programming and the very early level propaganda and programming and mind control with how they now structure the content of our very early learning books and textbooks to the more advanced textbooks in medicine and science and engineering and technology and physics and science and so forth. So now you know the information in our textbooks only comes from the very large corporations that can afford these research institutions and the lab. So by controlling the labs, controlling the educational institutions, you pretty much control the flow of knowledge and what goes in and what gets taught at schools and what does not get taught at schools. And you know by now that any teacher that strays, or lecturer at university that strays away from the textbook, teaching what's in the textbook, gets fired, loses their job. And you realize it's a draconian system that has been imposed on us. It's nothing to do with education and learning. It's all programming us and preparing us to be very obedient future labor force. That's ultimately what it comes down to. And then the important thing, you start the kids as early as possible. Start brainwashing the children as early as possible. Brainwashing them in the content of the textbooks, in how it's presented, how it's taught, how we control the behavior, how we make children do things, follow orders, etc., etc., and break down our natural ability of creativity. The entire school process is a very cleverly disguised propaganda machine and brainwashing manipulation machine to break down the very early creative abilities and creative skills that we have as young children and replace them with dictatorial fear-mongering, obey your teachers, obey your masters, obey your superiors, obey your leaders, and so forth. Take control of the media is one of the key things. Obviously, you are aware of the fact that all the major media and news networks are controlled, and through that, they spew the ongoing, never-ending, brainwashing, repetitive propaganda that they create for us. The developing story. They develop the story. They create the story. They develop the story, and then they turn it into reality. The developing story scenario in the hundreds and thousands of TV channels that are controlled by the international media distribution networks, the platform that distribute the content for all the news networks. They use mind control tricks and tools that are not really understood by the public. And this is the other thing, is like people don't understand certain words, certain phrases, certain the way that you answer, the way that you ask questions, the way that you intimidate people. And they train the journalists on these major news networks, go through these schools where they trained to do this. And it's spectacular to what levels these people go. So mind control tricks and tools not understood by the mainstream public. And then over and over, keep promoting through the media, through the textbooks, through the education system, keep promoting the globalist agenda in every possible subject, in everything imaginable. The globalist agenda is technology, healthcare, minerals, industry, corporations, countries, borders, you name it. That's the globalist agenda. Currency, money, obviously, banking, central banking, all these things that they have absolute control over. Always make people believe that they're in control, that they know what's going on, that the rest of the people have no idea what's going on, that we just dumb stooges that have to hang on every word they tell us because they're very smart and only they know how it works. And then finally, in this process, obviously there are many other things they do. I've just really touched upon a few of the most obvious ones that you probably are aware of. The final thing that the global elite's objective is make life as difficult as possible for as many people as possible. And that is really, for me, that's probably the toughest and the most heartbreaking part of this whole global elite control system. And the dumbing down of the people, the disinformation, the propaganda campaign. While the people are disinformed, naive, ignorant, beautiful souls that are born and live life believing what they're told and just simply believing that the government is their friend, looking after them, the government will never do anything that will harm them. And these beautiful, naive souls, naked souls that are just so trustworthy and trusting, just go out there and they just cannot succeed in life. And life is so hard and so difficult, and they just can't understand why life should be so hard. And this is why they have to make life so difficult, because they have to keep people tied up and occupied so they don't have enough time, spare time, to go and do research, to get informed, to get educated, and to become wise, to attain wisdom and break through that global control barrier and the control system that has been imposed on us, and realize what's going on, realize who we are, where we come from, and why we're here, and what has been done to humanity. So this is what they do. And this is why so many people struggle for most of their lives. Think about the statistical probability. And this is a simple scientific physics mathematical argument. Now, if you study statistical probability, like flipping a coin, heads or tails, flipping a coin, heads or tails, ends up more or less 50-50, 49-51, 48-52, 50-50, and it varies all the time, very close to evening out. Statistical probability normally balances things out. Because in nature, keep in mind, we're going to talk about nature, the structure of nature. So the toroidal fields that manifest as a primordial shapes of everything in creation, these beautiful balanced toruses, these toroidal fields, that vibe spin this way and from this side and opposite way in this side, and where they meet, they form that beautiful accretion disk, and the accretion disk and the toroidal, this perfectly balanced toroidal field. This is a balanced organism in nature. And this is how everything should work, balanced, 50-50, the yin and the yang, and so forth. The fact that out of 8 billion people in the world, 7 billion people wake up every day and they go to work and they work hard and they do something. They dig trenches, they build cars, they make building materials, they make beds, they do washing, they look after children, we grow food, we bake food, and we do so many different things, make clothes and invent things. So every day, 7 billion people go out there and they do something in the hope that they'll better their life, to invent something, to create, invent new technology and so forth. And out of those 7 billion people, majority of the global population, very few of those people ever attain a happy life and attain happiness, prosperity, and abundance. Most of the people alive today die in poverty, misery, unhappy, disgruntled, confused, and wondering what the hell happened. Why did they have to go through this life and this torture and this misery? And it's this complete imbalance that clearly shows us that this is not part of a natural, balanced, organic, statistical probability outcome. The fact that so few people succeed in attaining their dreams or being able to create this or create that, our natural skills and abilities, clearly shows us that there is a program, some sort of a program that controls all of the goings on in the world that prevent people from ever achieving their dreams, making life as difficult as possible for as many of us as possible. And then obviously we need to continue these lies and propaganda and control, not just for a decade or 10 decades or 200 years. We need to continue this for thousands of years, actually. And this is where it becomes really, really mind-blowingly interesting to contemplate the idea that this lie and this control mechanism has been going on for thousands of years, not just for the last few 200 years or 250 years since the Rothschilds took control of the global financial empire or created their financial empire that run the world, but that this financial empire actually has its origins some 4,000 BC, 4,000 years BC, when the first money was introduced to humanity as a tool of control and tool of enslavement. When we realize where money comes from and what it really is, that it's a tool of enslavement and we've been using it for thousands of years under control by those who control the supply of money, things change. And we realize that this control mechanism has been going on for much longer than we could possibly imagine.
Yeah.